Hola, somos Tania Moreno y Daniela Álvarez de TCU.
Y estás escuchando College Volleyball Weekly. ¡Go Frogs!
This is Tania Moreno and Daniela Álvarez from TCU.
And you're on College Beach Volleyball Weekly. ¡Go Frogs!
Hi everyone, I'm Charlie Ekstrom of Stanford Beach Volleyball, and you are listening to College Volleyball Weekly Beach Edition.
Hi, I'm Alana Rennie of Arizona Beach Volleyball.
And I'm Alex Parker of Arizona Beach Volleyball, and you're listening to College Beach Volleyball Weekly. Is that right? No.
Hey, good day, everyone. Welcome to College Volleyball Weekly Beach Top 20. Got to get that straight here because I do a indoor men's top 15, so you gotta make sure I got to get that clear here. But as you see, that is not a men's volleyball player on the screen. That is Charlie Ekstrom of Stanford, now number 8 Stanford according to the recent polls that came out this week. But thanks for coming back on, Charlie.
Thanks for having me as always, Mads. We miss you, but I'm glad that I could be here on this beautiful Thursday morning.
That's right. And Mads is working away on we'll call it a ad hoc practice assigned by coach. Would have been on today, and definitely some big weekends coming up, which we totally understand. You got Pac-12s coming up in next weekend. She's got the CCSAs. I mean, everyone's coming into postseason. One starts this week, and that's ASUN, and we'll talk about this in our notes here in a few moments. But we wanted to look at some of the Week 8 results, and I wanted to start by asking you, Charlie, what results caught your eye in Week 8?
Yeah. So I think the biggest team of the week that I noticed and that I had in my notes right off the bat was LMU. They kind of came out guns a-blazing this weekend, and they had some nasty upsets, especially nasty upsets of number 4 FSU and number 3 UCLA. UCLA came back and had the grudge match come back and defeated them yesterday in their senior day. But LMU in the Cal Poly Center of Effort Challenge really came out and was just, they only lost to USC. They beat everyone else, which was awesome to see. They're doing pretty incredible things. And other note is that they lost to USC 3-2. There are not many teams who are losing to USC 3-2 right now. So it's pretty impressive that they came out and just did some damage this past weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to say who it was, but I think you're familiar with the losses that or the wins that LMU had. And I think one of your former partners was the victim of one of those losses for SC.
Yes.
It's a sunny day out there, but we love her to death. You guys can check the website for those results. We won't say it here, but yeah, but you bring up an interesting point because LMU came in so hot at that Center of Effort Challenge at San Luis Obispo, and seeing those results, they are grinding and gritting. And I saw them, and although they lost yesterday in the grudge match at UCLA on Senior Day, they have some really good pieces at each of the different pairs. For instance, you have Avery Popinga and Maureen Kinna at the 2s. And those are 2 long individuals who can block. And actually, Maureen on defense, she gets to a lot of balls, and she's super agile. And in the number 1s, you definitely have Reika Orsi-Toth and Megan Rice. And Reika Orsi-Toth, phenomenal defender. She's so fast in her feet. And Megan Rice, just a crazy, insane jumper, and saw some insane block moves she made, not on the ground, but in the air, reaching over, pressing over. So, but what's your experience with LMU, Charlie?
Yeah, LMU, they're an incredible team. And you just said it with Megan and Reika. When I saw that pairing, because I know that Reika was playing with Selena last year, Selena Marolf, and they kind of were bouncing between 1s, 2s, maybe 3s occasionally, but really 1s, 2s. And they were a force last year. And so now they've got Megan and Reika together, and Megan is a phenomenal athlete. I had the opportunity to train with her last summer and really get to know her. She's phenomenal and she's super physical. So watching the 2 of them together, that's a pretty absurd combination, which is awesome. You mentioned Avery and Maureen, which I think they're a very fun pair to watch because they're very fun to compare to a partnership that I'm a little bit familiar with 2-6-1 blocker defender combos, which maybe rhymes with my own name and then Maddie Kriz. And so watching them play, I think it was really fun because Maddie and I almost like look at their defense and we're like, oh, like those are some fun things that we could implement with one another. So I think that it's really fun to kind of like look at comparisons, look at the like absurd physicality that is like a big blocker and a big defender duo. I think it's really cool. And I mean, LMU's got some depth to their program as well. So I think that, I mean, they've always been they've came in last year as a force and they had just stayed a force the whole year. So I think it's going to be really cool come trophy hunting season when we see some of these teams. Like, I don't think that the stage is just set very clearly. I think that there's some real good potential for some upsets coming out early.
Yeah, I think, well, I don't want to jump too far into the conference tournaments because LMU, they're looking really good in their conference tournament. And we'll talk about the NCAAs and after we do our little recap of the week. But one of the teams that I've been watching all season has been Grand Canyon because they're an independent, but they've stayed at 7 the entire year of polls, it seems like so far, in both the ABCA and the collegebeachvb.com poll. They were undefeated last week, 4-1 wins against Arizona, 3-2 versus Long Beach State, and then SFA 5-0, Cal State Bakersfield 4-1. They're kind of the real deal is what I'm beginning to realize. I saw them at the Battle for LA early on. I'm like, yeah, this team has potential. So any thoughts on Grand Canyon?
Yeah, I mean, seeing as how I get to the fortunate piece of playing them this weekend, GCU has.
Oh, did I set you up like that? Oh, I'm sorry.
GCU has definitely been fresh on the mind. They're an incredible team. I mean, last year we got to see them a couple times. We beat them both times last year. This year, they beat us in some nail biter games. They beat us 3-2 to take over that number 7, which we had started at. We were kind of bouncing back and forth with them between 7 and 8, and they've kind of stayed there after taking us 3-2. I'm really excited to play them this weekend because they're really, really high energy. They are loud, they are proud, they are fighters. And so I'm really excited to see how our game goes, how our duel goes against GCU, but also, I mean, them being an independent going into, I mean, obviously we'll talk about this in the future with what, or like in a later point of today, what NCAA's looks like, but them being closer to the West Coast and being an independent school definitely makes it tough for them, but also makes it a very feasible place for them to be in. So
yeah, well, they've had was the ABCA pair of the week in Alanis Navas and Abby Hansen, whom I got to see at Bell for LA. And speaking with Abby Hansen, she's like, Alanis, or Alana, I think is what she goes by. She's like, yeah, it's crazy playing with her because she yells at me all the time. But I mean, it's good stuff. It's just she's just the fiery player, and she gets me doing things that I don't normally do. But it was funny because Abby is so, a nice girl. She's like, yeah, I'll do it.
yeah, Allie, right? Allie?
Yep, Allie. Yeah. Sorry.
No.
Abby, so many Allies and Abbies right now.
a lot of them, and they're all wonderful people, so it's easy to mix them up. But no, I mean, playing against them, I actually got the fortunate bit of playing against Allie and Alanis. And you're right. I mean, Alanis holds Allie to a very high standard, but also Allie holds herself to such a high standard. So they are intense. Like, it's really funny, the on-court versus off-court personalities, because they're both such sweet girls. But like when you're on the court with them, it is get after it, get gritty. It's a fun match when you play against Allie and Alanis.
Anything else catch your eye during the week?
Yeah, I was gonna say, looking not down, but in the middle of the rankings, I want to hear your thoughts on FAU, and just chat about FAU for a second, because I feel like we haven't talked about them a lot recently, and they had a huge win over FIU 5-0 this weekend, and they and FIU have kind of both been at 12-13, like pretty consistently bouncing back and forth between the two. But with that sweep of FIU, I feel like FAU should be kind of swinging into that role of stepping above FIU a little bit, because they won 5-0 against FIU, 5-0 against Tulane, and that was their weekend. So pretty impressive. FIU in comparison, beat Stetson and beat Tulane 3-2, but then also got swept by FAU. So not quite as forceful of a weekend for FIU, but a really forceful weekend for FAU. They came out ready.
Hi everyone, this is Madison Fitzpatrick at Florida State, and you're listening or watching College Volleyball Weekly Beach Edition Top 20.
Hi, I'm Erica Brock from FAU. Hi, I'm Mackenzie Morris from FAU. And you're listening to College Volleyball Weekly Beach Edition.
Yeah. Well, with FAU, the mainstay in their lineup and the winningest pair in the history of that program are Erica Brock and Mackenzie Morris. So, with them as the staple, all the other pieces just have to do what they're called to do, grab two more and get the dual win. But they've been doing better than that, especially since FAU, FIU are in that new conference that's broken off, Conference USA. They're definitely, and I guess we kind of have to talk about tournament teams because we're 1 week out of the conference tournaments, and it's hard not to see FAU getting the automatic qualifier because of their record against other teams in that conference. And the fact of the matter is they've been one of the most stable teams in that conference. And, as I was saying, their foundation comes from Morris and Brock. So expect good things from FAU. I expect to see them in Gulf Shores. Where it gets shady is who gets that at-large berth. But we'll talk about that more because I've broken it down so I can see it. I'm like, man, it's going to get messy in both sides when you start looking at the 7th and 8th bid out of the East and the West Coast.
Yes, it definitely is. And I think you brought up a great point there with FAU. I feel like FAU is one of those teams that's been robbed or been so close the last several years at coming to the national championship tournament and been robbed like that. I mean, Kenzie and Erica are a fantastic team and they've been that staple for so long, but that team has been deep for a long time. So I'm really, being as one of the teams that made the national championship tournament last year when it was 8, I even was looking at it. I was like, there is so much more insane competition than just these 8 teams here that should be here. I'm really happy that the NCAA expanded our bracket this year to 16. I have so many positive thoughts on that because of the fact that I think that there are a lot of teams that deserve to be at this national championship tournament that are finally, hopefully going to break in and make it this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully us included.
Well, one of the matches that caught my eye this last week is Hawaii at the number 8 position, but they actually suffered a loss to Washington 3-2. But, from what I can gather, and, once people start streaming or putting on their Instagram lives, from what I understand, the conditions were crazy insane because it was hosted by Washington on the beach, wind, rain, cold, and that basically, it's funny looking at the different climates where things are being played. You see the native girls still wearing their uniforms, their shorts and their tank tops. The Hawaiians are full garb.
Oh, yeah. I feel like, talking to the girls from Hawaii, they came for one of our home tournaments last year. And it was to us, it was sunny, 60 degrees, beautiful out, tanning season. We're all right, in between games, jerseys come off, let's get our tans on. And Hawaii's in parkas. They're it's freezing here. We're come on, it's sunny. It's so funny. Every time that they come to the mainland, it feels like they're always freezing because it's always so perfect there. And I'm like, nah, man, there's some elements, but we're good. It's so funny.
Well, their head coach, Evan Silverstein, when they're out here for the Manhattan Beach event, the UCLA Invitational, he's wearing his Ugg boots or, full jacket. And I'm like, it's not that cold.
Come on, Evan, pick it up. So funny. Hawaii, though, they've put up some really good wins this season. They split with LMU, they split with us, they split with Berkeley. But they've also had a couple upsets that are a little bit uncharacteristic of them. They lost to UC Davis earlier this season, 3-2, and now with the loss to Washington, 3-2. I think that it's almost like that little hump of the elements, Hawaii kind of needs to be able to adjust to those elements because in beach volleyball, we never know what's going to be where. And you just kind of have to almost expect the worst when you're going in and then get surprised by the best. And so, that's a big upset for Washington. That's Washington's second big upset of this season, they also upset Berkeley at the Pac-12 South tournament. And so, I mean, Washington's kind of coming in led by head coach Derek Olson. They're doing some good things there. And so, I mean, I think that in the years coming, we're going to see them kind of breaking their way in.
Yeah. Well, let's look a little deeper in the, what would be the, we'll call it the teens to the 20 rankings of this week. And one of the teams that Georgia State had wins against South Carolina and FGCU, or Florida Gulf Coast University, and College of Charleston, which is a good statement for them. Unfortunately, because of the conference tournament they're going to be in, I don't know if it's going to be enough to get that at large, because they are in it with, I believe it's the FSU, LSU, and TCU.
Yes, I believe that they are in that. I believe that they are in that branch of the CCSA. A little interested at that split with FSU, LSU, TCU, and Georgia State all being in that same conference. I mean, that's a gnarly. I mean, being in a conference that is also gnarly with the Pac-12. I know, I feel the pain. I feel that. So Georgia State, they need to come out ready for this conference tournament, because I mean, they've got opportunities to win some games and compete for that at-large spot, or compete for that East Coast spot that they might be able to get. It's good to see that they're winning the games that they're supposed to. I think that that's always kind of the thing that you want at the end of season, is like win the games that you're supposed to and fight for the upsets. Because as long as you're winning what you're supposed to, if you can pull off a couple of those upsets, that's when you're competing the most for the at-large berth. And so, I mean, I feel them on those ones, like they're winning the things that they're supposed to, which is really good to see out of them.
Right.
I also want to look to a little bit deeper as well with Arizona. Arizona's had a couple upsets. They've had a couple losses, couple wins here and there. But I kind of wanted to ask you, because we've had Atlanta on a couple times now. And I see their only loss this past weekend was to GCU, but they had a big win versus Long Beach State, which Long Beach State has kind of been a force this season. They've been producing a lot of upsets themselves. So now to see them get upset by Arizona, where do you think this kind of puts Arizona in contention with everything?
Well, the unfortunate thing is, like we were talking about the CCSA and where Georgia State was at, I guess Arizona would be the Georgia State of the Pac-12, because you've got Cal, you've got Stanford, hello, Charlie, USC, UCLA, and Washington is also playing well. So now Arizona has been in the polls longer, and everyone seems to say being in the polls doesn't matter when it comes to the committee. But I mean, to the eye test, like, who are you going to see? Oh, Arizona's been in the polls the entire season. There may have been 1 week they fell off to Arizona State, but then he jumped back on the next week. But, you know, for the most part, Arizona has been really solid. You know, to have a loss to Grand Canyon is not a bad thing, because they are a solid program. They've beaten some top teams, and they've got a great record. So Arizona is anchored by Atlanta and Alex Parkhurst. And they've got some other younger pieces that are developing, but they're coming through here in the tail end of the season, which means their development is going as planned for that program.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've gotten to see them firsthand. I got to play them a couple weeks ago. I don't even know at this point. I feel like season's gone by so fast, but also like the weeks feel like months. It's crazy. But I mean, they're a good team. They fought with us. I believe we took the win 4-1 with them, but everybody was fighting. Like, there was nothing that was an easy win against Arizona. And so, I mean, they're a great team. I mean, as we're coming into conference play, I hope for them that they can keep winning the games that they're supposed to. For us, I hope that they're not upsetting and winning the games that they're not supposed to, so that we can keep winning the games that we're supposed to.
Right.
But I mean, we're going into Pac-12 championships. We have a weekend this weekend to uphold, but then next week going into Pac-12 championships, I know that something that we're prepared for is like every game in the Pac-12, as always, is going to be a gritty battle. So we have to be ready for fighting.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to week 9 and what's coming up. I know we've already got some match completions here, or dual completions, which, you know, I'll share with you here. It's basically the UCLA gets revenge on LMU 4-1. after the weekend at the Center of Effort Challenge in San Luis Obispo. But two particular pairs I'm going to pick out that were the standouts were the LMU ones, Megan Rice and Reika Orsi-Toth. They lost the first set against Abby Van Winkle and Lexi Denneberg, but came back in firing fashion in sets 2 and 3. But seeing their athleticism and their physicality, Megan Rice has got a strong arm swing, almost Charlie Ekstrom-esque. But I was watching Abby get touches on the blocks off of hits of Megan, and they were ricocheting so far out of play. And Abby was getting good reads, but Megan was just out muscling the block because she is coming in with so much speed, with height on her approach and at apex of her jump, and hitting with full force. And seeing where that ball was going was pretty crazy.
Yeah, she's got a cannon. She does. And she jumps high. I think that that's the other thing, is that what we're seeing from a lot of talented blockers that might be considered undersized. So I've heard that those of us who are 6'1" are now the undersized blockers of the world. Slightly unfortunate for us. But something that I even talked with Megan about is that being a quote unquote undersized blocker, we've both really kind of like honed in on working on our jump. And really, really trying to get that angle so that we can get more power and have a little bit of advantage over these big blockers. And she does a really good job of it. I mean, she has the arm swing that is absurd. Like, she hits balls hard, but also flies. So she's just got a trajectory on the ball that a lot of people can't necessarily match up with. Like, even blockers who do match up with it still struggle with it.
Yeah. The other pair for UCLA are the fours. And I mean, you've heard their names multiple times before: Sophie Moore and Nelly Muskowski. 22 and 3 in the season. They go to a 3-set tiebreak. They are becoming the new version of Little Miss Clutch. They'll lose the first set, or they'll drop a set and they'll come back and win in the third in dramatic fashion. But they're so constant. They're just a stable, great countenance on the court, and their skills do the talking. LMU tried to focus their serve on Natalie yesterday. I'm like, gosh, do you want the bigger banger or the surgical striker in Natalie or Sophie getting you? And they chose to go that route. And I saw Natalie pound so many balls.
They are awesome. And I think it's really cute. Like, UCLA's team name for them is the Teenagers. Because I mean, they're still 18, 19. They are still teenagers. And so I think it's really cute. It's like, oh, the teenagers win again. The teenagers smoke some girls again. Like, let's go. And I keep looking at them and I'm excited because they matched up last time that we played UCLA. They actually matched up with our teenagers. We had all freshmen with them, and it was an all freshman duel that went to 3. It was 15-12 that they took it to clinch for UCLA. And I know that I think that it was like one of the most heated matches that I've seen this season. I mean, they are really, really good. And now they're kind of frustrating everybody that they're so young and so good. And so now everybody, like, I think everybody wants to beat them, but they're still beating everybody. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the 22nd, which is tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get this episode out in the next few hours here, but I had 2 in mind, but I wanted to see what you saw as matches that or duels to focus on.
I actually have the exact same 2 in mind for you, because I think that these are both 2 big opportunities for all 4 opportunities for 4 teams. So we can go off with the 22nd, the Arizona versus Cal Poly in Salt Lake City, and LMU versus Long Beach State in Los Angeles. I mean, Arizona and Long Beach State, both being lower in the rankings than the 2 teams that they're playing, have some big opportunities here. Cal Poly's kind of had a bounce around season. So I think that this one, I mean, this is a very crucial win for Cal Poly over Arizona. And Long Beach State, they just got beat by Arizona, but they've put up some big upsets the rest of season. So them playing LMU, if they get upset LMU, could kind of put them into a really, really good contention. And then Cal Poly with LMU, as long as they win, I mean, again, they're looking really good with their conference. They're looking really good in general. So yeah.
Well, my take on it is actually it's big for 3 of the 4 teams participating, because Cal Poly, if they want to still have a chance at getting an at-large, I feel like they would need to beat Arizona. Also, for Long Beach State, in order to make that strong case, they at least have to compete with LMU beating them would be great, but it's just hard for me to see that happening with the way their LMU is playing in the last few days. Now, anything can change, as we all know, but if the eye test says, LMU is playing really well right now, for the most part, and Long Beach State is just on the cusp of something big. They just need to not get those errors at those inopportune times. And they're going to have if you can turn a couple of those errors around during the regular season, they would have some big upsets under their resume. Cal Poly, they've been playing some of the toughest opponents, and the record doesn't show anything, but it's a Todd Rogers coach team. They're there, they can play. But I also know that Arizona is they're vying for that at-large bid, and they're on the tail end of they're in the front end of the outside looking in category when we start looking at the automatic or the at-large berths. So let's jump to 23rd. ASUN Championship starts out, and that's number 18 Stetson, number 20 FGCU's conference, and then University of North Carolina Wilmington, College of Charleston, Mercer, Stephen F. Austin, and Eastern Kentucky, UNF, North Alabama, Central Arkansas, Jacksonville, and Jacksonville State. So that's a big tournaments are going to be happening. I believe it's tomorrow, or is it 23rd tomorrow? No, Friday.
Saturday.
My days are all messed up. So
they're all twisted up, but all that matters is that it's this weekend.
Yep. And then I know that I'm going to mention it for you because I'm going to want you to talk about, but man, it's a big brawl in the Pac-12. We have rivalry weekend. Don't be caught on the Stanford campus wearing any kind of blue because you may not come back alive. It's Cal versus Stanford.
No blue and no purple this weekend.
Purple, yeah. Yep, I remember went to a Cal Stanford football game and I watched a news reporter get drilled by the Stanford crew.
Oh my goodness.
UCLA at USC, and a lot of eyes are going to be on both of these matchups. So let's start. We'll end with your matchup, but let's talk about UCLA at USC. What are your thoughts on that? What could happen this weekend?
I am very excited to see this one because they are split. I mean, literally, I think every season we see them split with each other. We see them battle back and forth. But right now, USC has the edge on UCLA because of the fact that they won 4-1 this past weekend. I'm intrigued to see how UCLA reacts and kind of comes back after kind of getting beat solidly by USC this past weekend. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to be had. And I mean, these two teams are two teams that are going to be very much competing for that Pac-12 championship. I know that we're competing against them. So I'm excited to watch those games after they're done. I'm excited to hear how they go and just really get ready and prepare for what's beyond this weekend because of the fact that while we have a lot of stuff to do this weekend, I think that UCLA and USC playing each other now is going to be a really, really good indication of how much what the battle is going to look like for Pac-12 championships. And it's going to help with seeding for sure.
Yeah. Well, Cal versus Stanford. I mean, there's obviously, Cal is without Mima Merkovich, which, I mean, unfortunately, one of the most charismatic personalities in the game, just such a fun person. And unfortunately had a knee injury and is done for the season. But Cal seems to have adjusted accordingly and are still competing at a pretty high level to be considered for an at-large. But, Stanford, girls look good. Yeah, Zelani Hodel, got to pretend like I don't know them. Zelani Hodel, Kate Kibbles, this blocker with a wicked serve, Charlie Ekstrom, and a few other deep, Maya, and a bunch of girls are just playing well at the right time. So what do you think that's going to look like for you? And you're hosting right in the sands on Stanford.
Yes, we are hosting. It is senior weekend. It is a big weekend at Stanford in general. And I think that topping it off with a grudge match with Cal, a rivalry match, is always a good one to kind of get for us. We are ready. It was a battle last time that we had to play them. I know that Maddie and I, we went to 3 with Ainsley and Ava. We ended up pulling off the win 16-14, and that ended up being the deciding that was one of the deciders. It was our fives, or it was our twos, fours, fives that pulled it off for us last time. And our ones and threes, Cal ended up taking. Cal took the threes, was like a gnarly game. I want to say that the second set was like 27-25 or 28-26. It was like late. The sun was setting. I feel like it's every year we end up playing Cal and it's always the last game of the day. And we're always all like really, really fired up. And so I think that that's going to be another indication of what it's going to be this weekend. It's a 5 p.m. game. We've got our crowd. They've got their crowd. We're ready. And I mean, Stanford Cal games are always fun to play against. And then it's always fun at the end because we like each other in reality. I mean, we don't like each other when we're playing each other, but we do like each other as human beings. And so it's fun. Like after like, great job, like you played awesome. No, you played awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't burn all your energy on that night because on Sunday, the last day of regular season, Stanford takes on number 7 Grand Canyon. And that could be a huge scale tipper for either team for that at large.
Yes.
Are they going to look head to head when it comes down to the matchups or getting the at large bid? So, and we talked about Grand Canyon already, but man, a lot of pressure for Stanford this week, and being it is senior with all those emotional things that are at stake, you know, especially with the crosstown rivalry to senior day. Well, actually senior day will be celebrated on the 24th. So, you know, you're spreading the emotionality
after the GCU game.
Right.
So we go intensity to emotionality. It's wild. I'm so old now that being that senior day actually affects me is kind of crazy. But I mean, we're ready. GCU, like again, I think GCU and Cal are almost like equally rivals for us because of the fact that the games are always so close with both of them. I know from our end, we are working our tails off in practice and that we are ready to fight and ready to take some teams. And we know that the opportunity is there to potentially compete for a West Coast bid as opposed to just an at large if we have the opportunity here. Because I know that GCU is in the contingency of West Coast bids as well as at large bids. Right. And so I think that we're coming in really, really ready to fight. And I'm 100% positive that they are also coming in ready to fight. So I mean, if we weren't excited already for the Cal versus Stanford match, I think that the GCU versus Stanford match is going to be equally as intense. And just, I mean, I don't know, we got to come out ready. We got to come out fighting, and so do they. So I'm excited to see where the tables turn.
Well, no doubt week 9 is going to end in exciting fashion. So we just have to wait for the results and find the streams. Are you guys on Pac-12 this weekend? Network?
We should be, I think, at least if not, we'll be on Stanford live stream, but we will be streamed for sure.
So be sure to check that out, fans. A lot of good volleyball up in Northern California, and well, UCLA at USC. I guess USC is doing their in-house stream as well. So, but I was going to talk about the NCAA tournament and the changes for this year, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to direct all you listeners to the volleyballmag.com article. There's a great breakdown by Lee Feinswag, the editor and writer of that piece, but breaks down what the tournament's going to look like this year. Essentially, there are 8 conferences, 1 automatic qualifier for each of those conferences. But what I wanted us to do is forecast what that could look like, although it's not the end of the season. So from the West, I'm going to read mine. I think I sent you this breakdown at the bottom of our notes, Charlie. But we'll start with the East: TCU, Florida State, LSU, Stetson, and then you have UT Martin out of that conference. I got to look at that conference name again. UT Martin is out of Ohio Valley Conference. Texas A&M Corpus Christi would be out of the Southland Conference. And then FIU. Then I have my outside looking in: Georgia State, Tulane, and FGCU. What do you think, Charlie? The East Coast, those are the automatics for the first few, but then who would be in contention for the at-larges? So
yeah, I mean, so looking in, we've got the big conference of Florida State, TCU, LSU, Georgia State. I mean, that's an intense conference, and only one of those teams is going to get an at-large. I think that the East Coast has a little bit of a tough point of being an East Coast team and having a conference with those three, not necessarily with two of them, with TCU, Florida State, LSU being three powerhouses, and two of those three are not going to get a conference bid. So I think that looking at East Coast at large, it's going to be two out of those three that are going to get the East Coast at large. They've been high in the rankings. They've put up huge wins. So if TCU wins CCSA, then I would expect Florida State and LSU to get the East Coast bids. If Florida State wins, then TCU, LSU. If LSU wins, then Florida State and TCU. So I'm really expecting those three to be qualifying for the NCAA tournament, even though they're all three in a conference together. I would be pretty shocked if one of them didn't, or if one or two of them didn't come out to the tournament.
Well, you still have FAU, which could, anything could happen in that tournament because FIU is a rivalry. I'm
for both of their sake, I hope that it's a close rivalry game because of the fact that then we look at large bids beyond the East Coast at large, and there's 4 at-large bids beyond there. And so I hope that neither of them get a sweep. I hope that it's a 3-2 nasty ending and that one of them gets the at-large or one of them gets the conference bid and then the next one gets one of the 4 at-large that's remaining after that, because I think that it would be huge for the East Coast to get one of those 4 larger at-large bids because of the fact that in the past it's been West Coast dominated.
Yep. Let's jump to the West Coast. And it's funny, in the article that I referenced earlier, for the Pac-12, it's not who's going to get in, it's how many are going to get in. It's USC, UCLA, Cal, and Stanford. And then you've got to take an honest look at Arizona and Washington, what we talked about earlier. But for the rest of the conferences, Hawaii out of the Big West, Grand Canyon, the Independent. You have Long Beach State, which they could upset Hawaii in the conference tournament, but gotta be concerned for that at large. And as my outside looking in, unfortunately, Cal Poly and Pepperdine. So wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I just said beach volleyball has been largely a West Coast dominated sport, not to shortcut or short sell the East Coast teams because they're very talented. It's honestly really a coastal sport, I feel like, because of the fact that we see so much strength on both sides. But I mean, the Pac-12 conference, I'd say we've got a lot of competition.
Yeah.
Big West, I think Hawaii and Long Beach State are both going to be vying for that position in the Big West. And they've split a bunch of games. I mean, I know Long Beach State came out and beat Hawaii 5-0, but also Hawaii has beat Long Beach State. Not 5-0, but Hawaii is still a very, very talented team and has put up some big wins. So that's going to come down between the two of them as a very, very heated competition. Looking at LMU with West Coast Conference, I think LMU's got not comfort, but I feel like we'll be seeing LMU as the West Coast Conference bid. Grand Canyon being a West Coast school, being a non-conference team, I mean, that just makes it that much harder to qualify as a West Coast school because Grand Canyon is again in the top 8 and doesn't get a conference bid. So they're competing with a lot of other schools and they don't have a conference. So they just are competing for that West Coast spot and then one of the at-large right off the bat. I think you're right with Cal Poly and Pepperdine being on the outside looking in for those West Coast berths. They're both very talented teams. Like we've had to fight to win our games against Cal Poly and Pepperdine this season. They're both very talented. They just are in a powerhouse side of things. And so unfortunate for them, fortunate for the growth of the sport. But yeah.
Well, there we have it. We talked about a lot. Surprising. I didn't think we were gonna have enough for this episode, but as always, we're in week 9 and season's coming to close as we enter into conference tournaments. So it's Charlie Ekstrom. Thanks for coming on to episode 9 or 10. I lost track as I'm in a whirlwind of volleyball this week. So
thanks as always for having me. I mean, I'm glad that we can always make it work. And I'm glad that we always have some beach volleyball to talk about no matter what.
Yeah, and I definitely want to announce, got some special guests coming up next week, Marty Swan and Jake Spiker Gibb, because they're all about developing people and getting them into college programs. So I thought I'd give them a chance to break, not only talk about what they're doing, but also talk about some of the top teams they're seeing. So Charlie, hey, good luck this weekend. I wish I could join you on senior day. That's you're one of those.
Thank
And
you so
Mads, we
much.
miss you. We know that life is on the horizon outside of your undergraduate, well, your graduate degree now. So we know that you've got to do your stuff, and you also got to play for a top ranked beach volleyball team in Florida State. So miss you, Mads. Charlie, have a great week. Good luck. And looking forward to chatting with you next week.
Yes, see you soon. Thank you.